What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Lock and Cash podcast. Bruce and Jeff back with you once again. And Bruce, I got one question for you. Did you step outside yet this morning? Because I stepped outside and it wasn't summer anymore. At that crisp, fresh, late August air smelled like football season to me.
We have, I'm not the weatherman, but we have record lows across the Northeast right now. I'm talking about all-time Farmer's Almanac lows, which means that football is on.
Yeah, it felt like mid-September when I stepped outside, and I was like, "Whoa, that smell is in the air. We're ready to go." So we're gonna give you guys a ton of info today to get you prepared for Week 1, and really for the whole NFL season. But we got some good stuff that we're going to talk about today. And getting ready for the Week 1 of the NFL, you got to look at the systems, you got to look at the data and everything like that. But we figured we'd highlight a few games. So obviously, this is going to start off with the Ravens Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. It's going to be the first game of the season. Baltimore right now, Bruce, a 2.5-point dog on the road. One of the things that I think about every year immediately when I see that the Super Bowl champion's opening up the season is that little bit of Super Bowl hangover. And obviously the Super Bowl was, 4 or 5 months ago, whatever it was at this point. So not a literal hangover, but just it's more of the fact that when you have such a successful season, you come into the next season knowing that, Week 1 is not everything, right? You know that it's really about how you finish down the stretch, and maybe those teams come out just a little bit less motivated, a little tiny bit of less complacent than the other team, who is, in this case, a team that you bounced last year out of the playoffs. So obviously really high expectations for both of these teams. What do you think about this Thursday Night Football game to start off the season?
There's a couple of factors that I'm really interested in seeing how they play out. On the Ravens side, one is some of their turnover across the offensive line, and how does that hold up against the Chiefs' front seven? We've had multiple changes across the offensive line there for the Ravens, but they are huge now. Like, if I don't know if you know this, they are gigantic, Jeff. I'm talking about they're talking about running 3 tight end sets on a regular basis with Likely and Andrews. I think the average size of their offensive line plus tight ends is still over 320. Wow. They got guys tipping 350. That combined with Derrick Henry, that combined with a nearly 300-pound fullback, they are the definition of jumbo. And it's going to be really interesting because they tried to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets last season with very mixed success, right? OBJ's gone now. So I think we're going to be seeing a really smash. I mean, they were smash mouth last year, but an extra smash mouth Ravens with a lot of jumbo packages. And how is that going to slow down the game? How is that going to impact the Chiefs defensive line? So that's number one. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because really at the receiver position after Zay Flowers, there's a pretty big drop off after your number one guy. So I think switching something like that is a good idea for them. And yeah, you're right. They've been smash mouth before, but whenever they get to those big games in the playoffs, they seem to get beat out in the trenches. So if you're gonna try to emphasize that this season, that should be a positive for them.
So that's number one, and then number two for them is also they have a new defensive coordinator.
Yes.
Right. So with that, how is that defense going to adjust to the Chiefs' offense, right? Which is sort of the model of consistency. I mean, their wide receiver core was super inconsistent last year, and I think that's probably going to continue going into this first game. But Patrick Mahomes is about as steady as you can get, despite his supporting cast. So for this, I mean, are there any angles that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, Mahomes. It honestly at this point, it doesn't really matter who you put with him. He's going to figure something out. So For me, I agree. That's one of the notes I was going to bring up was the defensive coordinator change for the Ravens and how they handle the Chiefs' offense, which is it's always going to be good. But the Chiefs' defense is kind of like, I mean, they got a lot of praise last year, but they kind of just are even still maybe a little bit underrated, and they seem to have the playbook on how to defend Lamar. I mean, now he's got more weapons. You do have Derrick Henry running the ball now, but they just seem to know what to do when it comes to Lamar Jackson and how to like limit his explosiveness, limit his ability to make plays. Like he'll still do his thing here and there, but they just overall, you come away whenever he plays the Chiefs, you come away from the game feeling like he was stifled a bit, and it's like it's almost like a mystery as to how. So I think that's interesting, but at the same time, the Super Bowl hangover worries me because last year they opened the season as well at home against the Lions after winning a Super Bowl. They were a 6-point favorite. They lost the game outright. And maybe a repeat of that this year. I also think the line movement tells you a little something. The Ravens were +3. They're now +2.5. So sharp action took the field goal away from you, which is unfortunate if you wanted to bet them. But it brings them down to fit the short road dog system, which I've talked about many times before, which is a plus EV system for short road underdogs. So for me, I would go Ravens, but at this with the 2.5, I think this is a really solid teaser leg to start the season, taking the 2.5 up to 8.5, and then combining that with another team maybe on Sunday. You could even combine it with the game the next day. That line's sitting at 2 as well. But I think the Ravens. I think the best way to play this for me is either Baltimore, ATS if you get back to 3, or use them as a teaser leg with the 2.5 and pair them with another team. So there's kind of, because of where it's sitting, there's a few ways you could play it. You know, depending on where this line ends up by the time we get to game week.
Yeah, I would go Baltimore against the spread. The only thing that is slightly concerning to me is Chiefs get a full off season with
Yeah.
Jones. That defense was a
Yeah.
completely different unit without Jones, with him sitting up in the stands. And we saw how long it takes when you sit out to get back into game shape, to
True.
get acclimated. I think I have maybe a couple more of those coming on with when we might get into fantasy in a week or two, but there's sitting out really impacts the unit. So I think a full off season of Chris Jones is going to make that unit come out firing and look more like what they looked like at the end of the season than what they did in the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
so that's my only concern there. But I do like Baltimore here.
Yeah,
I want to see big dudes push that ball.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a better spot. It's a stronger spot for the Ravens. I mean, Mahomes last 20 as a small favorite though. He is 15-5 against the spread. But when you dig into those, I mean, you know, you should do this for every trend or system you look at. At least skim. When you dig into them, a lot of those come late in the season and in the playoffs. So maybe early in the season you catch them slipping, you get one of those L's. I agree with you on the side of the Ravens. The next day we have a unique game. By the way, I don't know if you knew this. On Friday, there's a Friday game. Packers Eagles are going to be over in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for a neutral field game. So this is part of the NFL international stuff, the global stuff, which you have your London games. But this year we got a Brazil game. So Packers Eagles is currently sitting at Green Bay +2. The Green Bay is technically the road team here, but this is, remember, a neutral field. If we can get into talks about adjusting for home field and what does this line say about that. But the first thing that I looked at, just like when I looked at Ravens Chiefs, I thought maybe Super Bowl hangover. The first thing I'm looking at is two teams that ended last year in very different ways. So interested to get your take on this game. What would you be looking at here?
I mean, as somebody who's been in Sao Paulo, it's gonna be so hot and humid.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how this is the equivalent of playing the entire game in that one spot in the Miami Stadium. Like
Right.
the visitor side September sideline where they perfectly angled the 1 p.m. sun to be facing their bench. That's going to be the whole field. Is it going to be an indoor game?
It's a good question. Well, right now let's see, where is this being played? He goes, that's a good question. Right now I'm looking at the weather, and the weather says it's it's going to be 85, projected 85 on that day. But what is the name of this stadium? Let's find out. So it's Neo Quimica Arena. Quimica Arena. Let's see if that's indoor or outdoor. No, it looks like it's open. So, yeah, it's open. I mean, it has like a, it's not, it has like a, so there's like a half roof almost, but it's open in the middle. It's kind of a strange look to it, kind of a unique look to the stadium, but it is open at the top. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me the under. I think it is going to be very, very humid, very hot.
Yeah. I initially looked at the under as well because the line's 48.5, and I do think that's a little bit high for these two teams. And I know these two teams can score, specifically the Packers like went crazy at the end of last year and they lit it up. But I think the Eagles are going to be better on defense, and the Packers we know are good on defense. Especially from last year, a really good passing defense. So they might let you run on them a little bit with Saquon, but I think they'll be able to limit the amount of explosive throws that Jalen Hurts can make. And I like that 48.5. For me, I like Philly more so though on the side. Philly -2 is something that I like. I think you're getting them at just a little bit of a discount because of how they ended the year. You know, I think it's like really easy to forget that team was 10-1 last year. Remember that? They were 10-1. And then the wheels fell off and they finished 11-6. And they get blown out in the wild card round. So nobody wants to nobody wants to end the season that way. But it was kind of a perfect storm of things where they, a lot of things went wrong for them. Turnover regression hit them like crazy. The secondary had injuries. They started to get destroyed by basically anybody who was lining up against them. So I think Philly's due for a bit of a bounce back, and I think the Packers too. They rattle off a bunch of wins to end the year. They go into Dallas and they just destroy the Cowboys as a big underdog, and then they go into San Francisco as a huge dog again, and they hold a lead into the second half before eventually losing. So I think you could make the argument that one team overperformed last year and one team underperformed. So you're getting a little bit of value here on Philly, I think.
I agree. I think Kellen Moore, the new offensive coordinator for the Eagles, is going to use a lot more motion. I think they're going to get those weapons into a better spot. I think Saquon Barkley is just such an upgrade, obviously, to the running back room. So I think they're going to be way better on offense. I do think we can talk about the trends on week one lines. I think 48.5 is just way too high for this. The X factor for me is you lost leadership on both sides of the ball last year from in the offseason from Philly, right?
Yeah.
You lost Kelsey.
Yep.
Right. And you lost name slipping, but defensive end, captain for years. I got it in my notes.
Oh, what are you talking about, Philly? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Who would they lose? They lost Reddick. Who else?
They lost Reddick. They lost Fletcher Cox.
Oh, that's right.
Retired,
yeah,
right? So Fletcher Cox wasn't the most productive in his last season, but
Yeah.
you did lose leadership on both sides of the ball.
Yes.
Which is really important when you're a winning team, right?
These are big locker room guys. Yeah.
Right. So you lost big locker room guys. You lost a very productive Hassan Reddick, right? You lost Kevin Byard as a starter at the safety position. So they did lose some guys, right? So
yeah,
I'm not sure who's going to show up, but I know they're going to be more productive on offense. I just think 48.5 is too much.
Yeah,
is like Josh Jacobs is not completely healthy.
Nope.
The wide receiver core for the Packers has a lot of question marks on who's going to be the breakout guy.
Yeah.
Sao Paulo is going to be hot.
It's going to be
hot and humid.
I like it.
Yeah.
I
walked outside for 10 minutes in Sao Paulo. I was just drenched in sweat. I'm not an NFL athlete, but playing 4 quarters there, I'm thinking that these guys are going to have some problems. You also don't know what the field condition is going to be out there. Is that a soccer field?
It's a soccer field. Normally, it's normally a soccer field. I don't know if they're changing anything for this game.
Is it turf?
I guess so. Let me see.
It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure, but I do like the angle for the under though, because I agree that line seems to be a bit high on the surface. So
Yeah. I think there's too much going on there. And then maybe this is a good point.
yeah, it's artificial. Yeah, it's turf. Yeah.
It's turf. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. Yeah. It's gonna be the Sao Paulo turf.
It's interesting, but I just think any game like that where you're feeling each other out, it's the first game of the year, you're in an unusual environment. It lends itself to unders in general, and then when you have two teams that on the surface, the casual fan will look at them as explosive offensive teams. So you have this total that's posted a bit higher. I think there's some value there. This is probably, remember total key numbers with totals are between 46 and 48. So getting 48 in the hook puts you just under the key number range, which is good, like for taking an under. So, cause a lot of games fall on 46 and 47, 45. So that's another thing to consider there too. So, so for me, for you would go under, I would go Philly -2. You would go under 48.5 on this game. Yeah. I like Philly quite a bit. I think I'm gonna be betting on Philly a lot this year, full disclosure, because I just think they're gonna be really, really good, especially on offense.
So there's Kellen Moore uses a lot of the running start motion that we saw Miami do excessively last season. One of the things to look out for, though, with this motion offense is referees are looking to stop your forward progress on your motion. They will penalize that this year. So things where you saw, Miami literally getting running starts.
Yeah.
And starting to turn up field. Tyreek's turning up field just as the ball's snapped. They are looking to penalize that this year.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be slightly less effective than it was last season, where we saw these ridiculous, like Tyreek was on pace to break the the receiving yards record.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
So this AFL shit is I think gonna stop.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna make sure that your entire body is parallel with the sideline before the ball snapped. If they see you turn upfield before the ball snapped, they're going to penalize it. Unfortunately, that's less fun for us as viewers, but I think it's going to help defenses.
Yeah, I can see that for sure, helping defenses. Then there's another game that I have highlighted here, which we can talk about. We can go through other games as well, but the first Monday Night Football game of the season is the Jets and the 49ers, with the Jets on the road in San Francisco. Lines come down, by the way, 5.5, now catching 5 points on the road in San Francisco. We know how the Niners season went last year. Really successful overall, got to the Super Bowl, lost a really tough one in overtime. The Jets had a pretty, disappointing year with how week one went. Bounce back? What do you think? Is this a bounce back year for the Jets? Can Rodgers stay healthy? A lot of questions in this game because of the health of the quarterback, but honestly, when the first play last year or the first few plays, I mean, those were anomalies, right? That's like that happening again is super unlikely in the first game, but this is a pretty good defense to go up against, and regardless. So, but anyway, thoughts on this game with a 5-point spread and a 44-point total? What do you think?
It's the Jets. The Jets are. I'm picking. So you take the Jets on the spread.
Yeah,
I'm picking the Jets straight up.
Yeah, I think the Jets. I agree. This is going to sound like the most biased thing ever with the Jets helmet behind me. I think the Jets win, though.
Jets money line. I think the Jets win this. I think their offensive line is going to be. So I'm concerned about a few things over the course of the season for the Jets. The age of their offensive line and their durability, Rodgers' durability. But in a very small sample size of one game, with all of those players healthy, I think that they have one of the best rosters in the NFL.
I agree.
And week one is where you get, probably the healthiest roster that you're going to get out of the Jets. You got weapons across the offense. That defense is in the top 3 talent wise. And you got Rodgers with a chip on his shoulder that wants to show people that he still has it, and now he has pieces to protect him, right? I think and then you saw the 49ers get gashed in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And we're gonna bring the Jets are gonna bring one of the best rushing attacks probably in the NFL. So I'm such a homer, dude. I'm such a homer right now.
No, but I try to
are there
like
any stats to back this up, Jeff? It is not just my heart.
Yeah, but the thing is that like I'm sometimes a homer too, but you know me, I try like really hard to put that stuff aside, and I still like the Jets in this game. I mean, we talked about Super Bowl hangover earlier, and it not only does it hit the winners, I mean, it actually hits the winners less. It actually hits the losers way more. So like last 20 years, the losers are 4-16 ATS in week 1 after losing in the Super Bowl. It's almost like losing in the Super Bowl is like more brutal than just getting knocked out earlier in the, you know what I mean? It's like it does more damage because sometimes teams go all in, and then you get there and you lose and it hurts you the next year, whatever the case might be. But San Francisco, you know, obviously they're going to be led by their rushing attack, but the Jets are going back to last year and should be again this year an excellent rushing defense, really good. So, you know, you got to see how the battle in the trenches goes there in terms of McCaffrey versus that D-line up front. But I think the bigger picture here is the other side of the ball, because you kind of know what to expect from San Francisco, what they're going to do. Purdy's he's going to play well. He's good. He's legit. He's going to throw the ball. It's really, for me, what does the Jets offense do and how does Rodgers look? Because yes, I think we both agree he probably won't get hurt again in week 1, and the offensive line is better to protect him. But we still have no idea what this offense looks like with him, because haven't seen them score, and we haven't seen them even maintain a full drive yet. We got to see what this offense does with him at quarterback. But I agree, you have what should be a very solid rushing attack, and you've got weapons all over the place. The roster top to bottom is solid. It's just with the Jets, it's just execution. But I think 5 points is too many for a team that I think is going to compete. You know, both of these teams are going to compete for their division. I believe. I think 5 points is too many, and I think you're getting those 5 points because the Niners are this juggernaut that went to the Super Bowl, and because the Jets are coming off a 7-win season and Rodgers is 40 years old, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all this stuff. I think that's giving you some value here, and I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is one of those games where the Jets win it. The road dog comes in and surprises everybody and gets the win.
So
and let's play out sort of the storylines here as well. Trent Williams still holding out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Gigantic. I mean, the centerpiece of that rushing attack, right? One of the greatest offensive linemen to ever play the game, holding out. Like I said, holding out, just because you come back before week 1 does not mean that you are clicking with the rest of that line, with that entire unit, right? So that's number 1. Then you have the Ayuk angle, unhappy, looking to get traded. Then you have the McCaffrey angle of like McCaffrey injured. Status for week 1 up in the air. If there was a game, tomorrow he said he would play in it. That doesn't mean that he's fully healthy to start the season, right? Yes. So you have these 3 gigantic pieces of that offense that are question marks now. You don't even know if Ayuk is going to be there for week 1, right?
Totally.
So I think with all of that swirling around, I think that this is such a good spot to bet the Jets. And if you're not a Jets fan, maybe you take the spread. If you're a Jets fan, take the money line. Ride with me, baby.
I think this will probably be one of those games where we're on the +5 and the +185 with a sprinkle. I wouldn't be laying 5 points with the loser of the Super Bowl, after with everything you just mentioned going on, especially with the historical data to back it up. So, and this came down, by the way. So sharp money already moved this down a little bit. So we'll see where it ends up. We still got a couple of weeks, so we'll see where it ends up. But I think 5's a solid number, and I think you could even potentially wait if there's some buyback and get maybe 5.5 back. I don't think you'll see 6 on this. You won't see a full touchdown. So this is about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, if Trent Williams comes back, McCaffrey says he's healthy, like you may see that line get bought up a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. But I think we're in agreement on the Jets here. So Jets +5 would be my bet in that game. And the total, I think, is set just perfectly. 44. I actually might even lean a little bit over, but I think it's set. So I think it's a solid number. I wouldn't touch that. But that is a primetime game. We'll save that for another episode. But primetime unders went crazy again last year. So we'll talk about that in a future podcast. But any other games? Those were the three that I highlighted. Do you have any others that jumped out at you? I didn't really. There was a couple dogs that I liked. I'll be totally honest. Like, I'm eyeing the Titans as a potential play for week one. I'm eyeing the Giants as a potential play. Haven't done all my digging yet, but I think the Titans plus 4.5 on the road could be a spot, especially when I see Caleb Williams going off in preseason. Makes me want to bet it even more, right? Because it's just preseason. Everyone's going to overreact to preseason. So, and then the Giants plus 1 at home against the Vikings, who I think the Vikings are going to be one of the worst teams, I think. So, the couple spots that I'm looking at, I don't know if you have any as well, but those are the two that I'm looking at right now.
No, I mean, for me, I like the Titans offensively this season. I think they're going to be definitely interesting if Will Levis takes a step forward.
Yeah, I like the coach. I like the coaching change too. I think it's gonna be good for them.
So
yeah, I mean, listen, I like myself some Calvin Ridley in fantasy.
That's what I'm saying. Calvin Ridley. You still got D-Hop. Yeah, they got some stuff. Yeah, and they lost Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry he's still obviously very good, but they had such a bad offensive line. They weren't having a ton of success with him anyway.
I think you're just gonna have a really dynamic backfield with Tajay.
Yeah. Exactly. And not having Derrick, and one of the things that I've been thinking about in this game is that or for the Titans specifically, not having Derrick Henry might be like the little catalyst you need to throw the ball more, like open it up, because it's like if you get pass heavy or pass happy and you're unsuccessful with it, then everyone's like, well, you got Derrick Henry sitting there, you're not using it, but now he's not there. It's like almost like pressure's off a little bit. Let's air it out. And Will Levis has shown he can throw some deep balls. So I think they got a shot to surprise some people.
Yeah. What's that?
I said best biceps in the NFL.
Best biceps. Oh, wasn't he the one last year who like threw a ball up and then he threw it to himself? Didn't something like that happen? It got tipped and he caught it. Yeah, no, he's a dog. Yeah, so we'll see if anything comes of those. But I was eyeing the Titans. I was eyeing the what was the other one I said? I can't even remember now. Oh, the Giants. But all right, wanted to get to a system of the week. I think it'll be good if we do one of these each week for the podcast, a trend or a system, something like that. Just because we're all about the numbers and the data here. So the one I have sitting in front of me for week one, guys, week one underdogs of +6 or more. And you can give me your thoughts on each one of these, but they are both disgusting. Week one dogs of 6 points or more. Last 20 years, 57, 40, and 2 against the spread. That is 59%. That is very profitable at -110. And you got two of these were very good last year. There was 2 of these and they went 2-0. So you got two more this year, and unfortunately it's the Patriots +9 at Cincinnati, and it's the Cardinals +6.5 at Buffalo. Is what I just told you enough for you to think about either of those teams, or are they just both like off the board?
No, I do like Cardinals a little bit there.
Cardinals, yeah.
Yeah, I think I think they will, if that offensive line holds up, they will be like surprisingly fun to watch on offense with Kyler Murray.
Yeah. I mean, they have an actual quarterback at least, right? At least they have a quarterback, yeah.
We got their tight end is a stud as well. So there's some fun stuff to watch there that may keep them in that game. And the Bills, you don't know what that offense is going to look like. They just lost, a huge piece on defense this weekend, or this past week rather. So there's some, you can squint at that game and you can say, hey, I can see how this game might be close.
Yeah.
Bills are trying to figure it out with a new look roster. Yeah. Cardinals are got the dog in them. I could see that. Patriots, icky, dude. Icky as hell. I don't know. I don't know how you're going to touch that with Joe Burrow. He's blonde now. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's a scary one.
Yeah.
Could they be any worse than they were last year on offense?
I don't know. No, well, on offense, the answer is no. I worry a little bit about that. And by the way, I agree with you. I think the Cardinals, by the way, have multiple systems. This is just one of the trends. They have like 3 or 4 systems on them for week 1 because they're a bad team coming off of a bad season and they're a 6-point dog. It's the touchdown is the threshold. Like once you get above 6 points, systems start to get activated, right? So yeah, the Patriots too have a couple of more on them, but I agree with you. They are the much riskier pick because the Bengals look good on paper. With a healthy Burrow, with the I mean that's a tough to go into Cincinnati and expect. I mean, and you don't even know who the quarterback is yet. Is it going to be Brissett or is it going to be May? We don't know. They haven't announced yet. So, it's either it's going to be Joe Milton. He's going to come and steal it. Yeah, he's going to come and steal it. So you're either starting Jacoby Brissett, who is a vet backup, or you're starting a rookie. So either one's not great. So yeah, that one's a little bit tougher for me, a tougher sell, but I think I think Arizona, I could get behind that. Maybe we'll do a little bit of digging and find some more, but I could get behind getting 6.5. If you gave me double digits on the Patriots, maybe we're talking if I could get 10 or more, but that to me is just, yeah, I don't know. I think the Bengals could win that game by a lot. And I worry about their defense now, which is what kept them in some games last year. But I think with the Patriots, it's one of those things where it's like on paper, they should still have a decent defense. But you know how when Brady left and they kind of like just fell apart and it was like, oh, a lot of it was Brady, right? Not so much Bill. And I think now with Bill gone, you're going to see maybe the same thing happen with the defense. And it's going to be like, oh, the defense was like all Bill. It was like all Bill.
It's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I can't convert a fullback to linebacker and have him get 100 tackles. It's like, oh. Yeah. Oh, who knew
It's
that?
like,
Who knew that Bill was scheming that one up?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I
Bill
think
was
we
cooking.
will see that.
Yeah, he was working magic on defense, and I think they might fall off a cliff, but we'll see. I know you had a thing about totals that we wanted to get to before we go too far into this. So why don't we hit me with some week 1 totals info, because sharp bettors always want to look at dogs in the under, right? I mean, that's like really the thing, dogs in the under. But sometimes there could be other angles that we can play on. So what do you got for me on the totals?
Yeah, so I was just looking at just a retroactive totals for the past 5 years. And we see, and maybe we could put that up somewhere on the screen, that across the last 5 years, Vegas has been getting pretty beat up on the unders for week 1. If you look, it's highly profitable. Really, any line that's over 44.5 has been pretty profitable to bet under for the last 5 years. And if we look at the differentials, 2020, 2021, Vegas was like pretty spot on, but the unders were still hitting. The last 2 years, unders have been adjusted massively. So we've seen it go down from about 48 in 2021 to 46 in 2022 to 44 in 2023, and we're still seeing those unders hitting. Now in 2024, we see that the unders have really stayed the same as last year. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, why hasn't Vegas adjusted lower again if unders have been massively profitable? So like my initial gut was, hey, let's just crush the unders again, right? Vegas didn't adjust. They've been really profitable. So why aren't we looking at these totals that are above 44.5 and just crushing them?
Yeah.
And then I looked at, the correlation between, roster turnover, coaching turnover over the last couple of years and how that correlates. Defensive coordinators, obviously turnover there has been one of the highest correlated things to point totals going up.
Yeah.
And this year we see 17 changes to defensive coordinators, which is by far the highest over the last 5 years. And 10 of those coaches are first-time defensive coordinators. So what that tells me is like, hey, maybe Vegas hasn't adjusted the line down because they're seeing a spot somewhere else where we think that there's going to be some regression here, right? So
Yeah.
what I'm sort of looking at is, hey, are the overs gonna get a little sexier now? They haven't adjusted. Are we gonna get closer to actual totals on the Vegas lines? That's what I'm looking at right now. 17 with 10 being first time.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. And and a big thing in the NFL is familiarity, right? So if you don't have that, it can definitely lead to problems. Yeah, I think that's a good find because that 40 last year 44.6 was the average posted total. This year again 44.6, but the actual finished at 41, and it's almost like Vegas is saying this is not happening again. Right? This is not happening this year again. So we're not going to adjust down. We're just going to leave it and everything's going to be just fine. And I can see that too. And another thing that we noticed was the number of divisional games, right? You only have 3 divisional games this year. And if you bet NFL at all for any amount of time, divisional games are where the unders hit. There's a bunch of divisional unders systems that go late into the season, all that stuff. So we only have 3 divisional games this year when I believe, did we have 8 last year, was it that you said?
Right. So I'll give you the totals for the last couple of seasons. So we had 3 divisionals this year. We had 8 last year, 6 the year before, 2 in 2021,
Right.
and 8 and 4 in 2020, 2019. So the lowest divisional game since 2021, where coincidentally in 2021 we had the highest average actual total for week
There you
one
go.
at around
There you go.
48 points. So it correlates pretty heavily that the lack of divisional games gives you more points on the board in week one. So we're
Interesting.
talking
Yeah.
lack of divisional games, high defensive coordinator churn. Vegas has not adjusted week one total lines at all from last year on how they closed. I think unless we see some huge swings in one direction between now and like the closing of week one, I think overs might be kind of hot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically that you can boil it down to that one thing, which is the last time we had this few divisional games, we had the highest average total across week one.
And it's
the only year.
Yeah,
It
the
was
only year.
Only year that
Yeah.
the actual total exceeded the Vegas average.
There you go. Yeah.
And we don't even know about the defensive coordinator changes because that hasn't happened in such a long time. We have 17 guys changing teams, or 17 teams who changed their defensive coordinator. So pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, I could see there's definitely a few games on this. Like, I mean, we already talked about the Monday night game where I said I would lean over on that game. There's like Vikings Giants is sitting at 41. I mean, both of those defenses are not good. So, the Giants have their quarterback back. I know he's not great, but they got somebody back. The Vikings at least have, it's not a rookie. It's not, I mean, they have Darnold, right? So it's like, these are not atrocious. Like some of these lines are crazy. And I think it's recency bias, right? It's like all these unders have been hitting like, and we always talk about in betting, you have a window, right? There's a window, like nothing lasts forever. So every system that we ever talk about on here, there's going to come a time where that system becomes non-profitable. It becomes negative. And then new systems pop up that become positive. And it's like you have to constantly be fluid about it. Otherwise you get stuck in if you get stuck in the same old rut each time, you'll eventually start losing money. So yeah, I think this could be a year with how the last 2 years have gone. It could be a year where the overs come back a little bit, especially like you said, early. Maybe later in the season it goes back to what it was, but I think maybe in the first month or so you could maybe start targeting some overs. I mean, Broncos Seahawks, right? 42.5. I know I know these are not like elite offensive teams, but these are very low totals. Raiders Chargers is 42. Commanders Bucks is 41. Jaden Daniels, he's going to score points. I don't know. Some of these are very interesting. So, definitely something to keep an eye on with the totals. All right, we're almost wrapping up here. I wanted to do some futures talk. You down for that? I got 2 futures I want to discuss, and then you can give me what you think about any future. So I think it would be cool if we talked about divisional first. And by the way, for the listeners, for win total stuff, there's already a video posted right now up on YouTube with where I go through all 32 teams and give you a lean on their win totals. If you want win totals, go to that video, watch that. For here, I thought a divisional talk would be cool. And when I'm betting a divisional future, Bruce, I always want to find a division where I think, or it's very obvious that it's a two-team race. I don't want to deal with, you can find long shots here and there there are some long shots that I do like that maybe we'll get to. But I think if you want to pick like a solid, not a sprinkle, I'm going to put a unit on this. I want this team is going to win the division. I want a two-team race, and I want to just pick who I think is the better team. So I'm going, like we talked about earlier, I'm high on the Eagles this year. I think the Eagles to win the NFC East at -120 is a very solid future. Now, full disclosure, when I gave this out weeks ago, it was +100. Some people got +105. It was around there. Now, I still like it up to -140. It's now -120. But I think this is very obviously a two-team race between Philly and Dallas. But like I said earlier, I think Philly's going to be better this year. And I think Dallas could potentially take a step back this year. All right, they won. I think they won 12 games last year, the Cowboys, but they have a total of their win total is 9.5 this year. There's a reason for that, right? They overperformed. They had an insane amount of, remember the Deron Bland pick sixes, a lot of defensive touchdowns, a lot of turnover luck. It was crazy, and then it all hit them. By the way, in the playoffs, look what happened to them in the first round. It all came back in their face. So, and they play a tougher schedule this year. You got the whole stuff with CD and Jerry and all these, and like just I think the Cowboys could take a step back this year, maybe be a 9 or 10 win team instead of a 12 win team. And I think the other thing about the Cowboys, by the way, is I think the other two teams who are the quote unquote bottom feeders of that division, the Giants and the Commanders, both should be improved. So your divisional games are not even going to be as easy as they were last year. Like, you might not beat the Giants 45-0 on Sunday Night Football this year. You know what I mean? Like you did last, or maybe you will, but I think the Cowboys could take a step back. I think the Eagles could take a step up. So I like Philly at -120 to win the NFC East, a pretty clear two-team race. The last thing I'll say is go look at, if you're watching this right now, Google Philly's schedule and look at how front-loaded it is, because they play all of their tough games in the first half of the season, and they end pretty weak. They end with a lot of gimmies, which is opposite of what they had last year. So I think you could even maybe play this. There's a couple teams you can do this with, by the way, where you look at their schedule and all of their difficult games are in the beginning. So you could maybe get a lot of value on them to win division after, like maybe look at week 6, week 7, week 8. They might be like +180. They might be sitting there at like 4. The Eagles could be like 4-4, right? Because they play a lot of tough games early on. And then everyone's like, oh, then they go on a crazy win streak to end the season and they take the division. That happened, by the way, with Buffalo last year, if you remember. They rattled off a bunch of wins and stole the division. That happens all the time every year with one or two teams. So you could look at Philly maybe through 8 weeks. They might be 4-4, 5-3. The Cowboys might be doing better than them. But look at the end of the schedule. The end of the schedule for Philly is super easy. So I like them. I like them at -120, and I'll be looking to, if we get the right price on them throughout the season, barring any injuries and stuff like that, I'll be looking to maybe add to that future as well. Maybe sprinkle more if you can get like +180, +200, something like that. So Eagles to win the NFC East. Thoughts on that?
I like it. I don't think that there is anybody in the race outside of the Cowboys. I think, again, when you look at holdouts, you are not going to be happy to find CD Lamb not on the practice field. I think that's going to impact their rhythm early. I don't know if he's willing to hold out the entire season, but if he does, that offensive unit looks so different. Yes. You have an old Zeke and basically what Brandon Cooks, like you got that offense does not look very cool. And as somebody who has seen Brian Schottenheimer run an offense as far back as I do as a Jets fan, I do not believe in that unit without CD Lamb. So we'll have to see there. So I like Philly. I think I think they've improved so much offensively with a new coordinator that this is going to be a more fun unit to watch. And they have probably on paper like the best weapons in the NFL if you look across the board. Goddard,
agreed.
The wide receiver core, Saquon, Hurts. They can kill you literally like anywhere.
Totally.
If I'm gonna bet who wins that division, I'm gonna bet on that. Like it's insane.
It's them. When you talk about talent on offense, it's them and it's San Francisco, right? I mean, that's the two teams that have the most talent on offense. So yeah, totally So I think minus 120 is a good steal, by the way. I think it should be a much higher. I mean, yeah, I mean, you reminded me of something. Zeke is the number one back, right? I mean, they lost Pollard, right? Pollard, I think, is with the Titans now. So
He's
So
with Tyler. You got Zeke and Rico Dowdle. It's like
tough.
people are saying Rico looks good, but he's also running next to Zeke.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm not high on the Cowboys this year. I mean, they won, like I said, 12 games last year. I think they overperformed a bit. So give me Philly to win it. And then a long shot. I got a long shot for you, and we'll get your take on this too. So one of the teams that I've already given futures. We've released already, I think, 7 futures picks to our subs already. So we've got a bunch out there. A sprinkle that I have, and that I think that you guys will find interesting is and I'll explain why. Let me give it to you first. Is the Detroit Lions to have the best record in the NFL at the end of the season? You can find this on DraftKings at plus 1100. And we know the deal with the Lions, right? They're, excuse me, very talented on both sides of the ball. Seems like they have a good coach. Jared Goff has been really good there. They got to where they wanted to get to last year. They got to San Francisco with a lead and couldn't hang on, a big lead and couldn't hang on. So it was a rough end to the year, but this team has a lot of potential, a lot of upside. But the theme since Jared Goff has gotten there and Campbell and flipped the franchise around, the theme has kind of been that this team thrives at home and indoors, right? And if you look at all of their deeper metrics like EPA per play, yards per pass, yards per play, all of that stuff is higher when they're at home and when they're indoors, like even road games indoors. Well, last year they played 11 indoor games and 6 outdoor games. The interesting thing about their schedule, they have a scheduling quirk this year where they're going to play 14 out of their 17 games indoors. So they're going to play their typical 8, I think it's 8 or 9 home games, right? And then they've got 6 additional games on the road, but against teams that play in domes. So this is going to benefit them, I think, majorly in terms of winning their division and just racking up wins in general. Their schedule is kind of middle of the road, but a lot of those games are indoors, which is going to help them a lot. What put me over the edge to maybe sprinkle this, remember this is plus 1100, so just a sprinkle, but what put me over the edge was just like, I looked at their 3 outdoor games, and it really ain't that bad. They got one in San Francisco, it's just a tough game, but it's in San Francisco, so it's not like the weather, because the thing with them has been the weather. So you're going to be playing in mildish weather. The other one's in Green Bay, but it's early. It's like, I think it's late October, early November, so it's before the snow and everything and the ice in Lambeau. And the last one is at Chicago. Those are the 2 divisional games. And at Chicago is going to be a cold winter game, but that week they actually have a rest advantage over the Bears. So it's a short week for the Bears. So everything is kind of just seems to line up for them this year. So I think it could be one of those years. Because remember, the best team, what was it? I think it was Baltimore had the best record last year, right? At 13-4. So the Lions finished with 11 wins. You're talking about your 2 wins off, right? So I think this could be one of those years where the Lions rattle off 13 wins and maybe are right there at the end for the 1 seed. You know, they're right there. Maybe it comes down to the last week. But I think you got value on this plus 1100 just on the fact that they play so many indoor games with that offense. And by the way, 8 against the spread, Jared Goff indoors with the Lions, 23-9. That's 72%. So they will cover those indoor games, and I think they're going to win a lot of them. So my sprinkle here, Lions to have the best record in the NFL. I think everyone's going to be taking San Francisco for that, Kansas City, Baltimore. I think the Lions could kind of be a sneaky one that comes out and maybe they win 13, 14 games.
Yeah, I'm low on San Francisco. So like
There you go.
I'm much lower than consensus around San Francisco. So if I am going to pick who's going to have the best record,
Yeah.
I think I would go between the Lions or the Eagles.
That's really the 3 teams that you can go to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and
I
this
think
is
it's the Lions or the
yeah.
Eagles for me, because when you think about the Eagles, they've gotten hopefully they fixed their problem, which is they were a uncreative, stagnant offense that was relying on superstar playmakers to get points because they could not scheme anything, right? And
Yeah.
if you can scheme even middle of the road, those superstars are going to take over,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to be so hard to win a shootout with the Eagles this year.
Yeah.
Like they have too much firepower.
Yes.
Unless, if they stay healthy, I think I would shade the Eagles here. But I get the Lions pick.
Yes. Yeah, it's a long shot.
We're not in the AFC at all. We're not even.
Yeah. Well, the only Kansas City's not winning 13-14. They just don't care to, right? They're going to easily win the AFC West and they're going to cruise. They're going to get their home playoff game and they'll be fine. But maybe the only other one is maybe the Ravens, but like we talked about their changes on defense and the new DC, like, maybe a little bit of flux there. And they won 13 games last year and look at what ended up happening. I mean, it didn't do, so for me, I think it's going to be one of these NFC teams that has the best record. And yeah, I agree with you. I actually agree with you that Philly is probably the next team that I thought about after this in terms of who would have the best record. But I like the value. I like the plus 1,100 on Detroit because of the indoor angle, which I think a lot of people maybe might overlook a little bit. Because scheduling is a big, you can only look at so many things to try. We're trying to predict a 17-week, 18 weeks. It's tough, right? There's only so many things you can look at. One of the big things is scheduling and how those teams play in those environments. So yeah, Lions best record, I think plus 1,100. I agree. The Eagles will be my second look at that. But I think, yeah, it's the Niners win total 12.5. I agree with you. I think they go under. I think they win 12 or 11 games probably.
Yep.
So,
all right. Well,
wait,
we are at time. I think next week we can do Super Bowl pick.
Sounds good.
Next week we can start digging into more of the slate and
sounds like a plan. Yeah. A lot of stuff this year coming up, guys. We're going to have, and by the way, if you're following here on YouTube, also follow the socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, because we're posting, starting next week, we have a lot of NFL systems and trends videos coming, and a lot of them are for week 1, but a lot of them are for the whole season too. Other thing is I'll link down in the description, the Gridiron Pass. A bunch of you have already signed up already for the full season. That's the season pass. The last 3 years, Bruce, I went and dug it up. You know me, the last 3 years, NFL and college football combined, so just football, we're up over 90 units, plus 90.36 units, NFL and college football combined. So if you guys want to hop on for the whole season, that gets you the futures that we've released already. I have more futures coming that I'm not done with yet. And then week 1 picks will probably come at the end of next week. So yeah, down in the description if you guys are interested. And thanks for watching. We'll be back. Football's back, baby. Thanks, guys.